Hey there, I'm Sully, and as always, welcome to the Gun Club. Alrighty, we're going to dig in a little bit more today into shotgun related stuff. We've got a multi part series going. We did the first one of these back, I believe it was October the 5th. I'm going to throw a link down below or a link somewhere in here, maybe up on top or somewhere up there. I don't know, up somewhere above there into part one if I can. But otherwise, we can go back, look through the channel. We did Let's Talk Shotguns Part One. In part one, if you remember, we went through a bunch of the different styles of shotguns, from pump to under over to side by side, double barrel, semi automatic shotguns, a lot of real different configurations, different styles, different actions. There's a lot of variations out there. Today, we're going to dig down a little bit deeper and we're going to go with one of the most basic kind of shotguns that's out there. And it's going to be, a little bit of simple stuff. So, welcome in. While everyone's filtering on in, we'll let you know. There may be a special weekend stream this weekend. I don't know. I'm sort of debating on it. If you haven't heard, it does look like Mr. Baldwin, Alec, may be getting charged with negligent homicide or involuntary manslaughter, whatever the term New Mexico is going to use. They're looking at putting it before a grand jury. They're bringing the warrant back again. I do believe, if I look back into my August files here, yeah, somebody said that was probably going to happen eventually, back when the report came back from the independent lab on the condition of the firearm. You can go back and look. I did an hour-long deep dive on it on the Rumble channel, where we went into how the gun worked, how it malfunctioned, what happened that day, and everything else. Well, they've recently announced that the prosecutor, the special prosecutor, and their team are looking at bringing it back. So, called that a couple months early. Not bragging, just sort of having my chuckle about it, because I got a lot of pushback on it. I got a couple of emails saying, "Oh, you're just trying to make him look guilty. You're trying to do this." No, I'm trying to say, did his actions fit the statute as outlined by the state of New Mexico? So you can look back on that. I may do another little deep dive in it. And I've actually talked to a couple of other creators, and I may be doing a couple of guest spots on the stream, because I did do a deep dive into the 500 something page reports and everything else and all the documentation of it that we're wallowing in. So we may be seeing another Alec Baldwin part three again. Yeah, I know. But I hate to say it. I'll get into that more later. Not going to get too sidetracked on that. Although I will say, I'm not saying that I think he is a threat to society, and I'm not saying that I think he should go to jail. I do think that he should be held accountable for his actions that resulted in the death of an innocent person and the wounding of another. And I do think there should be some consequence or something for that. Personally, if the judges in New Mexico are listening, I doubt it, but if you are, if you do hear this, I'd like to see Mr. Baldwin have to do a nice 30-minute PSA on firearms safety and firearms education, and then make it free public domain to any firearms instructor anywhere in the country. Alec, you've got a big name. You could really do some good here on firearms safety and education and the consequences of being dumb with a firearm. Like, killing someone. Whoops. You were reckless. You did it. We know you did it. Now they're going to prove it. So, enough about that. Like I said, there may be another side stream coming up for that one. Let's get back into shotguns. Now, if you recall, one of the big things I said is, we all worry about our everyday carry, our sidearm, our pistols, our revolvers. But when we get into long guns, everyone is so enamored with the capabilities of rifles and the modern sporting rifle, the AR platform or the AK platform, and all the wonderful things you can do, some of the great stuff that's coming out. But for simple, inexpensive, cost effective, there's the good old fashioned American shotgun. Now, the shotgun picture there, very common, very generic, so to speak. That is one that is for sale locally at one of our dealers here. You can guess who I get a lot of my stuff from. PSA. They don't pay me to say it, but I go there a lot and they've got some pretty good prices. That is a standard 12 gauge pump action shotgun. Very simple, 2-3 controls on the whole thing. You've got a cross stock safety. You've got the pump that you use to pump it, and you got the bang switch. So it's very simple. It's got about an 18.5-inch barrel on it, which is pretty much the shortest you can get a standard shotgun in these days. And again, it's a conventional. It's not a fancy. It's not a bullpup. And it's pretty much a point and shoot kind of thing. Doesn't need a lot of sighting in, a lot of custom work on it. It's great the way it comes off the shelf, and it can do a lot of things. The one you're looking at there in the picture, folks, it's $250. $250 out the door, your local PSI. So, for what it is, for what it can do, and we'll talk about its capabilities, what it can do that the standard AR can't. ARs are great for personal defense, for long shots, that stuff. But for up close and personal, for close quarters, for home defense or hunting or varmints, or this can give you a lot more. Now we're going to get in tonight into how we feed our shotgun. Now, feeding as a shotgun is pretty important. They're pretty easy to feed. They require less care and less maintenance than an AR does. So when we look at what we feed it with, that is your typical shotgun shell there. Now I'm going to blow this up for you so you can get a good look at this. I pulled this off of a website on shotguns. Pretty much every shotgun shell is made up something like this. It's going to have the primer there at the base of it. On the base, it's going to say what gauge it is. That's the diameter of the shell, as you'll recall. I said 12 gauge is the most common. You can get all the way from 10 up to 36 gauge, also known as 410. So again, lots of different gauges. 12 gauge is pretty much the most common out there. So because it's so common, there's lots of ammo for it. 20 gauge is also very common. But for 12 gauge, we've got our primers there on the bottom. Then we've got our powder. The primer gets hit by the firing pin. It ignites the powder, causes the powder to expand very rapidly. And then we have our wadding. And on the left-hand side there, you've got your actual projectile, which is on this one, pellets. Appears to be some very small pellets on the left. On the right, you've got a projectile, which is a solid slug. And then the top is got the crimp there on the top of the one on the left so the pellets don't roll out. The one on the right, the slug is held in place by the hull, or that's the red part, or the red shell around it. Now, when you look at this, again, they're pretty similar. 12 gauge shotgun shells. They can all look very much alike, and then we'll learn how to read the side of them, learn to read what each different shell is or what it means. So if we look at the markings on them a little closer, a 12 gauge, again, it's going to have the manufacturer and the gauge on it, so we know what size shotgun it goes in. 12 gauge. Then the shell length. 2 3/4 is one of the shorter shells you'll see, fairly common. Sometimes you may see 3 inches or more. Then it will talk about how many ounces of shot it has. What's the total weight of all the shot in it? Now, it may be one big shot or a bunch of little shots. The shot size is actually the 9 there. That actually tells us, what size pellets are in it. So it's got 1 1/8 ounce of number 9 shot in it, and it's got 3 1/4 powdered dram equivalents. That lets you know a little bit about how much power it's got behind it. 2 3/4 is the length. Many shotguns can take 2 or 3 different lengths of shells. So again, from that standpoint, very easy to use, very easy to determine, and work from there. So now, what do we want to use? What's the right tool for the right job? Well, depending on what length you're designed for, 12 gauge, a lot of times will come in 2 3/4 inch, 3 inch, 3.5 inch. A lot of shotguns will take 2 or 3 different shell lengths. I know one of my pumps says it'll take 2 3/4 or 3 inch. You probably don't want to use 3.5. It may be a little bit too much boom for it. Okay, great. So it gives me that choice of versatility in a simple pump shotgun. Then we look at, what size shot do we want? What size pellets do we want? Well, bird shot typically ranges from number 1 up to a number 9 shots, and the smaller the pellets, they'll travel further. So number 1 is a lot bigger pellet than a number 9 is. The bigger pellets will do more damage to whatever you're hunting. Let's say you're doing something like a larger bird, say a turkey. You may want a number 1 or a 2. If you're looking for something, smaller like a dove, you may want to be in like a 7, 8, or a 9, depending what you're hunting for. And you can also talk to other people who have hunted in that area. What have they had good luck with? Remember, smaller pellets go further. Bigger pellets pack more punch when they hit whatever the target is. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Now we'll go to the next stage here. Buckshot. Now, buckshot ranges from about number 4 all the way up to what we call triple aught. You'll hear about double aught buckshot or triple aught buckshot. That's that 0. Instead of saying it's a 000 or a 00, no, it's a double aught or a triple aught buckshot. A triple aught buckshot, each round is actually bigger than a 38 caliber bullet. A double aught's about the same size as a 38 caliber. And again, these bigger and bigger pellets as you go all the way up. And again, the bigger pellets are going to have less per shell, but they're going to have bigger pellets and do more damage, more penetration. But the smaller ones will travel further. And again, you choose this based on what you're hunting for. So, okay, if we're going out for varmints or small critters or something like that, or we're going for birds, maybe we want a 7, 8, or 9. If we're going for, deer, maybe we want a double aught or a triple aught buckshot. Maybe a number 1 would be a little bit on the smaller size. But again, we'd have more travel, but less punch. So it may wound the animal, but not take the animal down as effectively as, say, a triple aught would. And again, we balance this out based on, how big the animals are in that area, what people are hunting with, what they have success with. Now, for human defense, for self-defense, for home protection, triple aught, double aught buckshot will definitely do well. We're going to be doing a test shoot with some stuff, and I'm going to show you the different patterns. My personal 12 gauge always kept it loaded with double aught or triple aught buckshot. Then again, could I have used, say, a number 4? Well, I used about a number 2 when I lived in an apartment just to sort of keep my penetration down a little bit. Was it going to be as effective? Maybe not. But if the first couple of rounds are number 2, and then subsequent rounds in there were, say, triple aught buck, okay, my first couple of rounds may not be that aggressive. If I got to the 3rd round, the pellets were getting bigger and getting more aggressive. The versatility, again, of a standard 12 gauge shotgun, you gotta love it. And from that standpoint, again, you go back and forth. Now, the last thing to talk about with shotgun loading is slug loads. Now, a slug load, like it sounds, is a single projectile. This would be much like a rifle. It would be much like a, let's say, maybe, single, again, individual projectile like a pistol or a rifle. One pull of the trigger, you get one projectile instead of 7 or 10 pellets of shot. Now, this can be used for defensive purposes. This is going to have some serious penetration. It may not only hit your target. If you miss your target, it may very well go through a wall or 2 or 3. These are some serious bad boys. They may be 7/8 an ounce or even more in weight, solid slug of lead. So let's look at some of these pellets here and get an idea. On the far left-hand side, that's, triple B bird shot, 77 pellets in one round of 12 gauge. And those, again, very small, but okay, lots of pellets. It's not going to penetrate that much. Now, if you try to use something like that for home defense, well, if they're wearing heavy clothes or a heavy leather jacket, that birdshot may not have enough penetration. And even if it does penetrate them enough to hurt them, it's not going to have true stopping power. It may hurt them and it may sting them, but it's kind of like the old, if you remember the Clampets, like Granny kept her shotgun loaded with rock salt. Wasn't going to kill you, but it would sting. Well, again, birdshot, it's not going to have shut-off power. It's not going to take someone down. It may hurt them, but again, not saying I don't want to get shot with it. I don't want to get shot with any of those. But if you're dealing with someone who's feeling no pain, high on drugs, and you're using that birdshot on the far left-hand side, you may not be able to quite take them down as well. On the other side, that number 4 buckshot. As you can see, you've got 27 pellets, so a whole lot less pellets, but they're much bigger. They're going to, do a little bit more damage in wounding someone. Now, you get into that double-aught buck, which is what that shows, the 9-pellet job there. Each one of those is 33 100ths of an inch. So you figure 33 100ths of an inch, that's almost the size of a 38 slug. So it's going to be bigger pellets, and it's going to be a bunch of them coming at someone. If someone gets hit with 9 shots of like 38 caliber, especially in a close range, they're going to reconsider some of their life choices, but it still may not have automatic knockdown shutdown power. Now, if you look on the far right-hand side there, that is a 1-ounce slug of solid lead. It's .729 caliber, which would be 729 1,000ths of an inch. Make it simple. If you think a 45 is big, this would be a .73. So you figure the size of that thing hitting a human being is going to do some major, major damage, especially if you're up close and personal. Now, it may not, be as accurate over long ranges as, say, a rifle cartridge would, and it may not be as effective as, say, a .223 if you're talking at like 100 yards or something. On the other side of the coin, most of us are not in home defense situations at 100 yards. Quite frankly, if you feel threatened by someone 100 yards away, you need to make some reconsiderations in what you're doing in life. So from that standpoint, that slug of lead, that's going to stop someone. Now, if someone's hiding behind the door of their car, that's likely to actually go through and penetrate the door of their car. So again, a slug of lead like that can definitely be a very formidable home defense. On the other side, if I'm hunting for small game or I'm hunting for varmints or something like that, hate to say it, I know there's people out there who, are going out looking at, shall we say, hunting for squirrels or hunting for chipmunks or things like that to put on the grill. That birdshot's going to be great. If you take out a squirrel or a chipmunk or some kind of small critter or varmint prairie dog with that 1-ounce slug, you're likely not to have much meat left. You're going to have little bits of fur you might find. So now when we look at that, again, if you hit a bird like a dove or a pigeon with that slug of lead, you're eating feathers for dinner, bro. Got bad news for you. But that number 4 buck or that BB bird shot, that will take the game animal down and leave you enough meat that you can actually prep it and eat it. So again, you look at the versatility across the standard 12 gauge platform. And again, when we figure it costs us, $249 to get one of these things, and then based on which load you put in it is what tool you want to use for it. Think of it kind of like the screwdriver. You go out and you invest in one screwdriver that's got all these different tips, and you can use it for regular screws, Phillips head screws, Torx head, hex head, every kind of screw, and that'd be kind of useful. Again, one long gun does a heck of a lot of jobs. Now, if you've got a bear that comes into your campsite or an aggressive coyote or something coming into your campsite and they smell food or they think you're their dinner, I hope you don't have that bird shot or that buckshot on the left. Yeah, you probably want the buckshot on the right, the double-aught, or, if you've got a rather large bear, that 1-ounce slug, guess what? You may be eating Yogi for dinner. He thought he was eating you. Bad choice, Yogi. So, again, very versatile tool, very wonderful tool. I talked to a gentleman today who's done some classes with us, and we've done some teaching with him back and forth over the years. And we're going to be going out to his training facility, and we're going to be doing a bunch of patterning of these. And I'm going to show you the distances of how they work. But as a general rule of thumb, inside the house, you're looking at what? 10 feet, 20 feet, maybe maximum 30 feet, 10 yards. At 10 yards, the number 4 buckshot will definitely slow him down. The double aught buckshot may stop him. The slug of lead, well, bye-bye, night lights out. So now, again, one tool can do everything from putting dinner on the table, meat in the freezer, or a bad guy in the morgue. Just depend on how you load it. And we are only scratching the surfaces. We can get into specialty loads. They make rubber rounds, which rubber rounds may be something nice to have at a campsite if you're trying to keep animals away from the campsite, but you don't necessarily want to put the animals down. You feel bad about putting the animal down, especially if you're not going to go ahead and harvest it. You may be able to use a rubber round. They make flechette rounds for shotguns. Flechettes are basically darts. Now, they're really, really nice against people who are wearing any type of body armor or anything like that. So from that standpoint, we can go through and figure out what flechette rounds will do up against different types of targets. You can look at actually pepper gas rounds, pepper ball rounds, if you're working in a security or law enforcement capacity, being able to launch pepper rounds out of a shotgun. They're less lethal. There's some that actually have beanbag rounds. That's one reason why these are still around in law enforcement and have been forever. Now, it was interesting. I had someone talk to me after we did the Shotguns 101, and he said he laughed about what I said as far as how durable and how low maintenance the shotguns were. He worked in a rather large metro area PD for a lot of years. He said the patrol shotguns in their cars got pulled out of the shotgun mounts periodically, wiped down, oiled, and reloaded. They got tested once every about 6 months and a couple of rounds put through it just to make sure it was still working. He said, as far as failures, jams, malfunctions, you don't have them with a 12 gauge pump. He was the one who told me, he said, a 12 gauge pump, these things last forever. He said when he was working at the academy as a firearms instructor, they actually kept their 12 gauge shotguns that they used for training on the range. He kept them in a barrel, basically a rolling trash barrel that he put them all in, nose down. He made sure the actions were open, they were rendered safe, and he just put them all in the barrel and wheeled them into a storage room. Now, when you can have a firearm that takes that kind of pounding and keeps on coming back for more, it's kind of a prepper's dream, folks. So I'll leave that with you. I know we're a little bit short tonight again, but hopefully we learned something on shotguns, their versatility, and hopefully we learned how to read a shotgun load. So again, what size shot, what am I going to use it for? Begin looking around. There's some great references online. Also, as always, we got to give a special shout out to my most favorite mouse in the world, Minnie Mouse, who works over at Southern Sisters Crafty Creations and makes our wonderful tumblers for us. Because after all, you have to admit she does pretty nice work. Kind of like her stuff. Alrighty, if don't have any questions, please give us a quick thumbs up, give us a quick like. Hopefully you got something out of this little stro. If you did, come on back, wait for part 3, because we're taking them out to the range and we're going to pattern out shot shells and show you how different shot shells will work, do different things, and give you a little bit of practical size up on them. All righty, folks, be smart, be safe. Bye.